Admiral Sarah stood on the bridge of the starship Unity, watching through the main screen as alien warships surrounded Earth. The blue planet she had called home for 43 years was now covered in smoke and fire. Cities burned while strange ships from 12 different alien races blocked out the sun. 3 months ago, everything had been different. Humanity had just invented faster-than-light travel. People celebrated in the streets when the first human ship reached another star system. Scientists talked about exploring the galaxy and meeting friendly alien races. Children drew pictures of colorful alien friends they hoped to meet someday. Those dreams died quickly. The aliens found Earth within days of humanity's first jump to light speed. At first, the humans were excited. Finally, they would meet other intelligent life in the universe. The excitement turned to confusion, then to fear, and finally to horror. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Confederation, 12 ancient races that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had laws, they said, rules that every species must follow. Humans were new, so they would start at the bottom. They would mine dangerous asteroids, clean toxic waste from alien worlds, and serve the older races without question. "We have been watching you," the alien leader had said during the first meeting. His name was impossible for human tongues to speak. He looked like a giant spider made of metal and flesh. "Your species learns too fast. You ask too many questions. You refuse to accept your proper place." The humans had laughed at first. Who were these aliens to tell humanity what their place was? Earth had democracies, free speech, and human rights. No one would accept slavery just because some alien said so. But the aliens were not asking, they were telling. When the human leaders refused to surrender, the aliens showed their power. They destroyed the moon in a single blast. The tides on Earth went crazy. Coastal cities flooded. Millions died in the first day. "Accept your place or we will end your species," the spider alien had said. Sarah had been a captain in Earth's Space Force back then. She watched helplessly as alien fleets destroyed every human colony outside the solar system. Mars' base went silent. The research station near Jupiter exploded in bright fire. Ships carrying human families were vaporized without warning. The worst part was not the destruction. The worst part was the other aliens who watched and did nothing. Hundreds of species lived in the galaxy. Most of them served the Confederation like slaves. When human ambassadors begged for help, these aliens looked away. They had learned long ago not to fight back. "This is what happens to species who think they are special," one alien had whispered to a human diplomat. "The Confederation has ruled for 10,000 years. They crush anyone who challenges them. Better to serve and live than to fight and die." But humans were different. Even facing total destruction, they would not bow down. Children born on Earth carried something in their hearts that the galaxy had almost forgotten. They called it hope. They called it freedom. They refused to give it up. The war lasted 6 months. Humanity fought with everything they had, but it was like ants fighting giants. For every alien ship destroyed, 10 more appeared. Human technology was centuries behind the Confederation's weapons. Brave human pilots died in battles they could never win. Sarah watched billions of her people die. Earth's great cities turned to ash. The oceans boiled under alien bombardment. She had been promoted to admiral as older officers died in hopeless battles. Now she commanded what was left of humanity's fleet, 23 damaged ships carrying 50 million refugees. The alien leader appeared on her screen one final time. His metal face showed no emotion as he spoke. "You have fought well for primitives," he said. "This is our final offer. Take your ships and leave the galaxy forever. Go beyond the rim where no civilized being lives. Never return. Do this and we will let your species survive. Refuse and we will hunt down every last human in the universe." Sarah looked around her bridge. Young officers stared at her with tired, desperate eyes. Behind them, through the ship's corridors, 50 million humans waited for her decision. Children who had never seen Earth's blue sky, parents who had lost everything, old people who just wanted to die in peace. She thought about fighting. Part of her wanted to ram the Unity straight into the alien flagship and die with honor. But that would not save the children sleeping in the cargo holds. It would not help the pregnant women hopping their bobbies might see better days. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. "You have 1 hour," the alien replied. "Then we finish what we started." Sarah closed the channel and called together her remaining captains. They were good people, all of them. They had fought impossible battles and never given up. Now they faced the hardest choice of all. "We cannot win this war," she told them. "But we can save our people. If we run now, humanity lives. If we stay, everyone dies." Captain Martinez, whose ship carried 30,000 refugees, spoke first. "What kind of life will it be? Alone in the dark between galaxies?" "The kind where children grow up," Sarah replied. "The kind where maybe someday we find a way to come home." They voted. It was close, but survival won. Sarah sent the message to all human ships: "Prepare for exodus. We leave in 30 minutes." The aliens kept their word. They did not fire as the human fleet gathered and jumped away from Earth. Sarah took one last look at her before giving the order. Earth was broken, but it was still beautiful. Blue oceans still reflected sunlight. Clouds still drifted across familiar continents. "Goodbye," she whispered. Then the stars changed, and humanity began their long journey into exile. Behind them, the galaxy celebrated the end of the human problem. The aliens had protected their ancient order. The dangerous newcomers were gone. Everything could return to the way it had always been. They had no idea what they had just created. The space between galaxies was darker than anything humans had ever imagined. No stars shone in the endless black. No planets waited to be discovered. Only emptiness stretched in every direction, cold and silent and infinite. Admiral Sarah walked through the corridors of the Unity, now 30 years older and carrying the weight of an entire species on her shoulders. Her hair had turned completely white during the exodus. Deep lines marked her face from years of impossible decisions, but her eyes still burned with the determination that had saved humanity from extinction. The refugee ships had been built for exploration, not for permanent living. They were breaking down. The food recyclers failed constantly. The air scrubbers worked at half power. Pipes leaked, computers crashed, and every day brought new emergencies that threatened to kill everyone aboard. "Report," Sarah said as she entered the main engineering bay. Chief Engineer looked up from a massive tangle of broken machinery. His hands were stained with oil and his uniform was torn, but he smiled when he saw her. "Good news and bad news, Admiral," he said. "The good news is we fixed the water recycler in Section 7. The bad news is the reactor in Section 12 is showing warning signs again." Sarah nodded. It was always the same. Fix one problem, find 2 more. How long before it fails completely? 6 months, maybe 8 if we push it. But Admiral lowered his voice. That reactor powers life support for 15,000 people if it goes down. "Then we better find another solution," Sarah finished. She had heard similar reports from all 23 ships. Humanity was dying slowly, one system failure at a time. But something strange was happening too. The engineers were not just fixing things anymore. They were improving them. When the food recyclers broke, the repair crews rebuilt them to work twice as efficiently. When the computers crashed, the programmers rewrote the software to handle problems the original designers had never imagined. Doctor ran the science division across all the ships. She was only 25 years old, but she had ideas that amazed even the oldest researchers. She had grown up in the void, and somehow that had changed her thinking in ways no one understood. "Admiral, you need to see this," said during their weekly meeting. She activated a holographic display that showed swirling patterns of energy. "We have been studying the quantum vacuum around our ships. Most people think empty space is truly empty, but it is not. Even in the void, there is energy everywhere. Sarah studied the display. Can we use this energy somehow? We are already starting to, replied with excitement. Look at this data from the reactor repairs. The engineers are not just fixing the old systems. They are creating entirely new ones that tap into quantum fluctuations. The efficiency gains are incredible. On the screen, Sarah could see power output charts that should have been impossible. The failing reactors were somehow producing more energy than they had when new. How is this happening? The children, Admiral, the people born in the void, they think differently. They see possibilities that those of us born on Earth cannot even imagine. Sarah walked to the observation deck and looked out at the darkness. In the distance, she could see the lights of other human ships scattered across several light years. 50 million people, the last of their species, somehow growing stronger in the place where they should have died. She thought about Young and the other void-born humans. There were thousands of them now, children and teenagers who had never seen a planet or breathed natural air. They should have been weak, damaged by their harsh upbringing. Instead, they were becoming something new. The changes were not just mental. Medical scans showed that void-born humans had stronger bones, better reflexes, and minds that processed information faster than normal. Some could work in zero gravity better than veterans who had trained for decades. Others seemed to understand technology at an instinctive level that amazed their teachers. "Admiral," came a voice over the communication system. "Please report to Laboratory Section 3 immediately. We have a situation." Sarah hurried through the ship's corridors, worried about another system failure. Instead, she found a crowd of scientists gathered around a young woman named Lisa Park. Lisa was 18 years old and had been born during the second year of exile. She was staring at a complex energy display with intense concentration. "What is the problem?" Sarah asked. Doctor pointed at the display. "Lisa is manipulating quantum fields with her mind, direct mental interface with fundamental forces. We have no idea how she is doing it." On the screen, Sarah watched as energy patterns shifted and changed in response to Lisa's thoughts. The young woman was not touching any controls or using any equipment. She was simply thinking, and reality was responding. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked Lisa gently. "Like I am connected to everything," Lisa replied without looking away from the display. "The energy, the space, the quantum foam that makes up the vacuum, it is all one thing and I am part of it." Word spread quickly through the fleet. More void-born humans began showing similar abilities. Some could sense the condition of ship systems from miles away. Others could somehow boost the efficiency of machines just by being near them. A few began reporting dreams where they shared thoughts with other humans on distant ships. The older generation was frightened at first. These abilities seemed impossible, like magic rather than science. But the void-born humans were still recognizably human. They laughed at jokes, cried when friends died, and loved their families just like everyone else. They were not becoming aliens. They were becoming more than human. "We have been thinking about this wrong," Sarah realized during a meeting with her senior staff. "We thought exile was a punishment. We thought the void was trying to kill us. But maybe this is evolution. Maybe we needed to be pushed beyond all limits to become something new." Captain Martinez, still commanding his ship after 3 decades, shook his head in wonder. "My granddaughter can fix a fusion reactor by touching it. My grandson says he can feel the shape of space-time around our ship. What are we becoming?" "We are becoming what humanity was always meant to be," Sarah answered. "Free." The old Earth-born humans began working with the void-born to understand their new abilities. Instead of fearing the changes, they embraced them. If this was what it took to survive, then they would adapt. They had always been good at that. By the end of the 4th decade in exile, the human fleet had been completely transformed. The ships themselves had evolved. rebuilt by minds that understood technology at a quantum level. The reactors no longer failed because the Voidborn could repair them faster than they broke down. But more importantly, humanity itself had changed. The bitter refugees who had fled Earth were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. They were becoming a species that could thrive anywhere, even in the emptiness between stars. Sarah was 73 now and knew she would not live to see humanity's return to the galaxy. But she was no longer sad about that. She had saved her people, and they had become more than anyone had ever dreamed possible. The void had not destroyed them. It had forged them into something unbreakable. Park stood in what had once been the bridge of a starship, but was now something far beyond anything his grandmother Admiral Sarah could have imagined. The walls were not metal anymore, but living patterns of energy that responded to his thoughts. The floor beneath his feet was solid light, warm and comfortable. Above him, the ceiling showed the real-time structure of spacetime itself, flowing like a river of stars and quantum foam. Was 45 years old and belonged to the third generation born in the void. His grandmother Sarah had died 10 years earlier, proud to see humanity transform into something amazing before her death. His mother had lived to see the beginning of the Great Change, when humans first learned to touch the fundamental forces of reality. Now led a species that had become masters of existence itself. "Show me the fleet status," he said to the living ship around him. The Unity had evolved far beyond its original design. It was no longer just a machine that carried people through space. It was an extension of human consciousness, a tool that thought and felt and dreamed alongside its crew. The ship responded instantly, flooding his mind with perfect knowledge. 23 vessels had become a single organism spread across several light years. 50 million humans now existed as both individuals and parts of a greater whole. They could be separate when they chose, or unite their thoughts into a collective intelligence that could solve problems no single mind could handle. The transformation had accelerated dramatically in the past 20 years. What had started as strange abilities in void-born children had evolved into complete mastery over matter and energy. Humans could now convert their bodies between flesh and pure energy at will. They could fold space to travel faster than light should allow. They could reach into the quantum level of reality and reshape it with their consciousness alone. "Contact established with Research Group 7, announced Dr. James, a fourth-generation Voidborn who served as humanity's chief science coordinator. At 28 years old, James understood physics in ways that would have seemed like magic to the scientists who had fled Earth. They have successfully completed the dark matter integration project. Nodded and opened his mind to receive the data. Information flowed directly into his consciousness without need for screens or reports. Research Group 7 had learned to interface directly with the cosmic web itself, the invisible scaffolding of dark matter that held the entire universe together. This breakthrough meant humans could now travel anywhere in the universe instantly. More importantly, they could tap into the fundamental energy that powered galaxies themselves. The old problems of fuel and power were now meaningless concepts. Humanity had become beings of pure capability, limited only by their imagination and wisdom. "What about the reality anchoring tests?" asked. "Complete success," James replied with excitement. "We can now exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously while maintaining individual consciousness. The test subjects reported being able to perceive past, present, and future as a single unified structure." Felt a moment of wonder at how far they had come. His grandmother's generation had struggled to keep basic life support working. Now humans could exist outside normal spacetime and manipulate the building blocks of reality like children playing with blocks. But the most important change was not technological. It was social. 3 generations of shared struggle had created something unprecedented in human history: true unity. Not the forced cooperation of desperation, but genuine harmony of purpose. Humans in the void had learned to think together when necessary while remaining individuals when desired. They could share memories, emotions, and ideas instantly across vast distances. A discovery made by one person became available to everyone within moments. A problem faced by any ship was solved by the collective intelligence of the entire species. Came a familiar mental voice. It was Dr. Lisa Park, now 50 years old and serving as humanity's primary consciousness coordinator. She had been the first to demonstrate quantum manipulation with her mind, and her abilities had grown beyond all measurement. We need to discuss the deep scan results. Opened a direct mental link with Lisa and several other leaders. Information flowed between them faster than any computer could process. The deep scan was humanity's most ambitious project yet, a complete survey of their home galaxy using their new reality manipulation abilities. What they found surprised everyone. The Galactic Confederation was falling apart. The 12 ancient empires that had exiled humanity were now fighting constant wars against each other. Their technology had stagnated for decades while they focused on maintaining their power through force. Worse, the species they had oppressed were finally starting to rebel. Look at this data from the core worlds, Lisa shared through the mental link. Images flowed directly into his consciousness, showing alien cities in flames and Confederation fleets stretched thin across thousands of conflicts. They are facing revolution on 60% of their controlled systems. The irony is perfect, added James through the link. By removing humans from the galaxy, they eliminated the one thing that had been driving innovation and progress. Without our influence, their civilization began to decay. Studied the information carefully. The Confederation had viewed humanity as dangerous because humans questioned authority and inspired others to demand freedom. By exiling the humans, the aliens had only delayed the problem. The oppressed species of the galaxy had eventually reached their breaking point anyway. There is more, Lisa continued. We detected energy signatures that suggest the Confederation is experimenting with reality manipulation similar to our early attempts. Their science is decades behind ours, but they are trying to develop weapons that can affect quantum structures directly. This was concerning news. If the Confederation developed even primitive reality manipulation technology, they could threaten the few remaining free species in the galaxy. Worse, they might detect humanity's presence in the void and prepare for their eventual return. What do you think? Asked the collective consciousness of humanity through the mental link. 50 million minds considered the question simultaneously, sharing thoughts and perspectives faster than any computer network could manage. The answer came back within seconds, unified and clear. It was time to go home. But not as the frightened refugees who had fled Earth a century ago. Humanity would return as liberators, carrying power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They would not come to conquer or to take revenge. They would come to free every enslaved species and end the age of oppression that had lasted for 10,000 years. Begin preparation protocols, announced to the fleet. We return to the galaxy. Throughout the 23 ships, humans began the process of transformation. Those who still maintained physical bodies converted to pure energy. The ships themselves began changing from vessels that traveled through space to entities that could manipulate spacetime directly. Felt the excitement and anticipation of his people through the mental link. They had spent a century becoming something new in the darkness between galaxies. Now, they would use that power to ensure that no species would ever again suffer the oppression that had driven humanity into exile. The void had tested them, forged them, and ultimately perfected them. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity had become. Grandmother whispered, thinking of Sarah and all the humans who had died to bring their species to this moment. We kept our promise, we survived, and now we are going home. Around him, reality began to bend, as humanity prepared for the greatest homecoming in galactic history. High Admiral stood in the command center of the Confederation flagship Eternal Dominion, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. He was the same spider-like alien who had overseen humanity's exile a century ago, though now his metal body showed signs of age and repair. Deep scratches marked his carapace from decades of fighting rebellions across the galaxy. Through the massive viewing screens, he could see the battle raging around the Nexus Prime system. Confederation ships fired desperately at rebel fleets while entire planets burned below. This was the 14th major uprising this year alone, and knew there would be more. Status report. He clicked in the ancient language of his species. Commander On, a younger member of the spider race, approached with obvious nervousness. High Admiral, we have lost contact with the Third Fleet. The rebels have taken control of 17 systems in the Outer Rim. The Federation is demanding independence, and the mining colonies in Sector 12 have stopped all shipments. His mechanical limbs twitched with anger. Everything was falling apart. The great Confederation that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years was crumbling like an ancient building, finally succumbing to time. What about the other Dominator species? Asked. Are the Crystal Lords and the Void Swimmers providing support? The Crystal Lords are dealing with their own rebellions in the sector, On replied. The Void Swimmers have recalled all their fleets to defend their home systems. The Metal Singers are fighting a war with the Free Robot Alliance. Every Dominator species is struggling to maintain control. It was the same story everywhere. The 12 ancient races that had founded the Confederation were all facing the same crisis. The species they had oppressed for were finally fighting back, and they were fighting with a coordination and determination that shocked their former masters. Remembered when the galaxy had been orderly and peaceful, every species knew its place. The strong ruled, the weak served, and everyone understood that challenging the natural order meant death. It had worked perfectly for thousands of generations. Then the humans had arrived. Even now, a century after their exile, felt a cold anger when he thought about those strange bipedal creatures. They had appeared in the galaxy like a virus, spreading chaos wherever they went. They questioned everything, refused to accept their proper place, and worst of all, they had inspired other species to think they deserved freedom. It is all their fault, muttered, his mechanical voice filled with hatred. Even in exile, the humans are destroying our civilization. But deep down, knew the truth was more complicated. The humans had not really caused the rebellions. They had simply shown other species that rebellion was possible, and once that idea took root, it spread like wildfire through the galaxy. The Confederation had tried everything to maintain control. They had built more warships, created harsher punishments, and even attempted to develop new weapons based on some of the strange technology they had observed during humanity's brief time in the galaxy. But nothing worked. High Admiral, interrupted Science Coordinator K, a member of the Crystal Lord species whose body was made of living diamond. We have detected unusual energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. The readings are impossible. Turned his attention to the science displays. What he saw made his synthetic blood run cold. The energy readings showed power outputs that matched entire star systems. The signatures were completely unknown, unlike anything in Confederation databases. How many ships? Asked. That is the strange part, Kay replied, her crystal body flickering with confused patterns of light. We can only detect 17 distinct signatures, but each one is generating power equal to our entire fleet. 17 ships with the power of fleets. His mechanical mind struggled to process this information. That is impossible. No species in the galaxy has that kind of technology. Sir, On interrupted urgently. We are receiving a transmission. It is being broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously, bypassing our communication networks entirely. "Put it through," ordered. The transmission did not come through their speakers or displays. Instead, it appeared directly in the minds of every being on the bridge. The voice was calm and human, speaking in perfect translation that every species could understand. "Citizens of the galaxy," the voice said, "this is Park speaking for humanity. We have returned. The age of oppression ends today. The galaxy will be free." Silence filled the bridge as the implications sank in. The humans had returned. The species that the Confederation had exiled to die in the void between galaxies had somehow survived and grown strong enough to challenge the greatest powers in the galaxy. "Impossible," whispered. "We destroyed them. They fled into the dark. They should be dead." But even as he spoke, more reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The impossible energy signatures were appearing everywhere at once. 17 sources of unimaginable power, moving through space in ways that known physics. "High Admiral," came an urgent transmission from the Confederation's Central Command. "All rebel species have received the same message. They are celebrating in the streets. They believe the humans have returned to liberate them." Rage built to a crescendo. A century of careful control was unraveling because of ghosts from the past. "Send the order to all fleets. Converge on the human signatures. We destroyed them once, we can do it again." Within hours, the greatest military force in galactic history began to assemble. Ships from all 12 Dominator species left their patrol routes and abandoned their battles with rebels. 10,000 warships representing the pinnacle of Confederation technology gathered in the central systems. The Crystal Lords brought their reality-cutting beam weapons. The Void Swimmers contributed their space-folding technology. The Metal Singers provided their quantum disruption devices. Every Dominator species offered their most advanced weapons for what they knew would be the battle that decided the galaxy's future. "We have assembled the most powerful fleet in galactic history," Admiral or of the Void Swimmers reported. "Enough firepower to sterilize 1,000 worlds. Whatever the humans have become, they cannot stand against this force." But as the great fleet moved toward the human signatures, strange things began happening throughout the galaxy. On oppressed worlds, the chains that bound slave populations simply disintegrated. Control devices that had kept species in line stopped functioning. The electronic barriers around prison planets vanished without explanation. It was as if reality itself was rejecting the old order. "Sir," Kay reported with growing panic in her crystal voice, "we are detecting massive quantum disturbances throughout the galaxy. The fundamental structure of spacetime appears to be shifting." Stared at the data flowing across his screens. Whatever the humans had become during their exile, they were already demonstrating power on a scale that challenged his understanding of what was possible. They were not just sending ships back to the galaxy. They were somehow changing the galaxy itself. "All fleets," he broadcast to the assembled armada, "maximum speed. We end this before they can fully deploy their power." But in his mechanical heart, felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest and domination. For the first time since the Confederation's founding, he felt fear. The humans were coming home, and they were bringing the end of everything the galaxy had ever known. Behind the Great Fleet, on worlds throughout the galaxy, oppressed species looked up at the stars and dared to hope. The humans had returned, just as the old stories promised. Liberation was finally at hand. The final battle for the galaxy's future was about to begin. Park existed simultaneously in 17 different locations as the human fleet approached the galaxy's edge. His consciousness flowed through spacetime like water, touching every human mind and coordinating their return with perfect precision. Around him, reality bent and shifted as 50 million human minds worked together to reshape the fundamental structure of existence itself. The galaxy spread before them like a vast spiral of light, beautiful and familiar despite the century of exile. but could sense the pain within those stars. Billions of beings lived in chains, their spirits crushed by 10,000 years of oppression. The time had come to set them free. "Confederation fleet detected," announced Dr. James through the collective consciousness link. 10,000 ships converging on our position. They intend to destroy us before we can fully enter the galaxy. Felt amusement ripple through the human collective mind. The aliens still thought in terms of ships and weapons, of physical matter hurling destruction across space. They had no concept of what humanity had become during their exile in the void. "Let them come," replied to all humanity at once. "It is time to show the galaxy what we learned in the darkness." The Confederation fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships arranged in devastating attack patterns that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Admiral's flagship led the charge, surrounded by the most advanced warships 12 ancient species could build. From their perspective, they faced 17 small vessels that glowed with impossible energy. The human ships looked nothing like the crude metal constructs that had fled the galaxy a century ago. They appeared to be made of living light, their surfaces shifting and flowing like liquid. "All ships," Admiral broadcast to his fleet, "open fire, destroy them completely." 10,000 alien warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Beam cannons that could melt planets, quantum disruptors that could tear apart atomic bonds, reality-cutting devices that sliced through the fabric of space itself. The combined firepower was enough to destroy entire solar systems. The weapons reached the human fleet and simply stopped. Every beam, every missile, every exotic energy blast halted in mid-space as if hitting an invisible wall. But there was no wall. The weapons had encountered something far more fundamental, human will made manifest in reality itself. Extended his consciousness and examined the attacking forces with gentle curiosity. The alien ships and weapons were sophisticated by the standards they had known on Earth, but they seemed like stone axes compared to what humanity had learned to wield. "Show them," said to his people. What happened next lasted exactly 17 minutes, though to the aliens it felt like an eternity. Humanity did not return fire. Instead, they began to demonstrate their mastery over existence itself. The attacking warships found their molecular bonds dissolving, their hulls turning into clouds of perfectly organized atoms. But the crews were not harmed. As their ships disintegrated around them, the alien sailors found themselves safely transported to nearby planets, uninjured and free to watch what unfolded next. It was not destruction, it was transformation. "Impossible," Admiral whispered as he materialized on the observation deck of a space station light years away. Around him, thousands of other Confederation officers appeared, all transported instantly across vast distances by human power. "This violates every law of physics." "Your laws were incomplete," came a voice that spoke directly into their minds, appeared before them not as a physical presence but as a projection of pure consciousness. "You understood only the surface of reality. We have learned to touch its depths." Through the station's viewing screens, the aliens watched in stunned silence as humanity began to work their will upon the galaxy itself. On every oppressed world, the instruments of control simply ceased to exist. Slave collars turned to dust. Prison walls faded like morning mist. The great machines that had kept billions in bondage became memories. But humanity did more than just destroy the old order. They began building something new. On planets where species had forgotten what freedom looked like, humans appeared as teachers and guides. They helped former slaves organize governments based on their own needs and desires. They shared technology that could heal poisoned worlds and restore devastated ecosystems. They offered knowledge that could help species reach for the stars as equals rather than servants. "Why?" Admiral asked, his mechanical voice filled with confusion. "You have the power to rule the galaxy absolutely. Why are you freeing our slaves instead of enslaving us?" Projection smiled with an expression of infinite compassion, because we remember what it felt like to be powerless. We remember the fear of extinction, the pain of exile, the desperation of fighting battles we could not win. No being should ever experience that again. Across the galaxy, the transformation continued. The 12 dominator species found their vast empires crumbling not through violence, but through the simple reality that their subjects were no longer afraid. When beings realized they could not be harmed by their former masters, the old hierarchies became meaningless. "What happens to us?" asked Crystal Lord K, her diamond body flickering with confused patterns. "Will you destroy us for our crimes?" "Destruction solves nothing," replied. "You have a choice to make. You can learn to live as equals among other beings, contributing to a galaxy based on cooperation rather than domination. Or you can be relocated to worlds where you can live in isolation until you choose to evolve." It was not a threat. It was simply a statement of fact. The old way of existing through oppression was no longer possible. The universe itself would no longer permit it. Most of the former dominators chose evolution. Faced with the reality that their power came from fear rather than true strength, many began the difficult process of learning to see other species as equals. Some chose isolation, unable to adapt to a galaxy where strength was measured by wisdom rather than force. Within days, the transformation was complete. 10,000 years of oppression ended not with a great battle, but with the simple recognition that it no longer needed to exist. Freedom spread across the galaxy like dawn breaking after the longest night in history. On countless worlds, species that had known only slavery tasted liberty for the first time. Children born in chains grew up to see unlimited horizons. Ancient cultures that had been suppressed began to flourish again. Stood on the observation deck of Unity, now a living ship that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions beyond normal perception. Through the great windows, he could see Earth in the distance, blue and beautiful and healing from the wounds of the ancient war. "Grandmother," he whispered, thinking of Admiral Sarah and all the humans who had died to bring their species to this moment. "We came home, and we brought freedom with us." Behind him, Lisa Park materialized with a smile on her face. "The other humans are asking what we should do next. The galaxy is free, but our work is just beginning." Nodded. "We become guardians. We watch from the spaces between stars and ensure that no species ever again suffers what we endured. When freedom is threatened, we will return. When beings cry out for liberation, we will answer." Throughout the galaxy, formerly oppressed species looked up at the stars with wonder and gratitude. The humans had returned from exile as something beyond their wildest dreams. Beings of unlimited power who chose to use that power not for conquest, but for liberation. The age of oppression was over. The age of freedom had begun. And in the darkness between galaxies, humanity took up their eternal watch, ready to ensure that the light of liberty would never again be extinguished from the cosmos. The exiles had come home as gods, and they had chosen to use their divinity to serve rather than rule. The galaxy was free, and it would remain so forever.